everybody. Our first lesson this week is introducing you to what your final project is going to be, your final assessment over Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. So we're obviously not in a classroom, we're not taking a test, we're not doing any of those things, but we're doing this hopefully really cool project that will show your understanding of all of the most important literary elements that we've been talking about and bringing all those things together into a pretty cool project that is called a one-pager. Okay, so I'm going to go into some detail. This slideshow that I'm talking you through right now will also be attached on PowerSchool, so you can go through it on your own again, but I wanted to make sure that I walked you through it and gave you all the information that you're going to need to start this project. Okay, so what is the one-pager? These are the key components of what goes into making a one-pager. A one-pager is a one-page, it's in the name, a one-page response to your reading and your interpretation, your understanding of this book we read together as a class. Okay? So it gives you a unique way, brings in some of those creative elements, brings in some artistic things, brings in your personality instead of just answering a bunch of pencil and paper questions. Okay? You can address all of this information in your own creative way. It allows you to be experimental, try some different things, come up with a design that you like, and it gives you an opportunity to respond to your reading, your opinions, your understanding, your interpretation in your own way with imagination and with honesty without having to worry so much about whether the answer is A, B, C, or D, things like that. It gives you some freedom and flexibility. Okay, so that's kind of the idea behind a one-pager. Here's a couple examples that I want you to look at, and these are in the slides, plus there's several more examples at the end of our slideshow that we will look at. Okay, so both of these, this one here on the left is about Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. This one is The Land, which is a different novel by Mildred Taylor, by our same author. But these are just two examples of what your final project could look like. Totally different in their design and their style and all of that, but they both cover the same information and components. Okay, so it's got the title, it's got the author, it talks about all these different things we learned about characters, we have kind of summary, we have all of these different things laid out in a bunch of different ways. But each one is one page, completely covered, completely unique design, but it brings all of the important information into your style and your personality. Okay, so there's just a glimpse of a couple examples. So, how do we even start? How do we make one of these one-pager projects? Okay? Okay, so these are the things that you need to include in your one-pager project. You have to have your title, obviously, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. You have to include the author, Mildred Taylor. And then it says include your chapter number, because here's the thing with this assignment. You individually are responsible for focusing your project on one chapter of this book. And yes, I'm telling you what chapter you are assigned. So there's a separate document on PowerSchool that's called chapter assignments, and it will have your name and which chapter is assigned to you. So as you work on this project, you go back into your book, reread or at least re-skim, preferably reread, that chapter that you are assigned, and then your information comes solely from that chapter of this book. So much good stuff in this book, and there's only 12 chapters, which means every chapter is full of conflict and characters and different settings and important stuff, and so you're just going to focus on one for your assignment. Okay, so you title, author, chapter number. Okay, you identify the most significant conflict from your chapter. Obviously, there's tons of different conflicts that we've talked about throughout this whole thing with the conflict with Stacy and TJ. You have the conflict of Cassie and Lily and Jean. You have the conflict of the Nightmen coming after a variety of characters. The whole thing with the Wallace store, and I mean, so many different conflicts run together in this book. Your focus is on your chapter and what is the primary conflict that that chapter deals with. So you explain and describe your conflict from your chapter, short summary, and then identify what type of conflict that is. Remember, there are 7 types of conflict: person versus, and we've learned about all those different types. So you have to identify which conflict is the one that you're dealing with, okay? Your project has to have a visual image, okay? We looked at those examples. If I click back, okay, it has to have a visual image. This one obviously dealt with the chapter about Stacy's coat and giving it away to TJ and all of that, okay? This one has a focus on the tree and the land, and so that's more of the focus. Remember, this is a different book by Mildred Taylor, not one of our chapters from Roll of Thunder. Okay, but that visual image has to be based in the chapter that you are assigned. Okay, so not everyone's going to have a coat. Not everyone's going to have a store. Okay, you got to look at different images from your content of your chapter. Okay, so visual image gives you a focus for your page, all of the different pictures and colors and all of those things to just kind of bring your whole project together in a really unique way. And then a short summary of your chapter. Okay, I don't need a whole page written. You're looking at, 4 to 6 sentences. What were the main events? What are the most significant things that can summarize your chapter? Okay, title, author, chapter number, conflict, visual, summary. Your setting for your chapter. It might be at the school, it might be at the Wallace store, it might be on the road walking to school, it might be at the church, it might be I'm trying to think of some of our, in Strawberry, okay, it might be all, these different places depending on which chapter you're assigned. What's the most impactful setting? Where does it take place? Give us at least four descriptive terms, adjectives. Describe it, bring it to life, time, place, weather, all of those things that impact the setting. Who was your main character, or who were the main characters in your specific chapter? I want at least 3 character traits. We have talked so much about character traits this year. Okay, those are those adjectives that describe not what the person looks like, okay, because that's not their character. Character traits are their personality, okay? So you're not going to say Cassie is female. You're going to say, Cassie is spunky or determined, okay? Those adjectives that describe who she is as a person on the inside, okay? Personal statement about what you read in this chapter. A lot of the things in this book have challenged us to think about our world in a new way, to think about racism, to think about discrimination, to think about equality, to think about family, to think about privilege. We talked about how they were so overjoyed to get fresh fruit and books for Christmas, and how different that is sometimes from our reality. What is a personal statement from your chapter? What struck you on that level and made you think about some things in the book, in the world, in your life, in a new way because of this book? 2 quotes from the chapter that most clearly capture just the overall significance of the event in the book. So find 2 lines directly that text evidence, okay? 2 lines directly from the chapter. A quote in this context does not have to be something a character said, okay? That's always great, but you're just quoting, taking word for word, a line or 2 from the book, directly from the book, okay? So, once you have all of those components, then you get to be creative. Okay, you get to make your one-pager colorful, make it interesting to look at. Now, some of you might be, it totally depends on your style. You might want, bright colors and stuff all over the place and lots of different fonts. Some of you might be more linear and just want it organized in a different way. We're going to look at a couple examples here in a minute that's going to help you see just some different ways that you can approach this depending on your creativity and your artistic style and personality. Everything on the page should communicate your understanding and interpretation of the reading, and everything should be focused on your chapter, okay? So that, in a way, should make it easier, but it can make it harder too, because you have to make sure that the things that you're talking about are from your chapter and you don't get kind of lost in what you know of the whole story. No white space on this project. Everything should be colored in. Everything should be part of that whole presentation. Okay, fill the entire page. When you get to work on your drafting and your final project, you're going to want to sketch it all out first. And there's a couple steps that you're going to go through this week on this project that will help make sure that your final product turns out the way that you want it to. Okay, and then fill stuff in. Don't fill it all in with marker. It makes the writing so hard to read. You can outline in marker, but colored pencil, crayons, things like that, especially since you're going to have to like take pictures of these to turn them into me. By coloring stuff in with marker and doing all that, it's going to make it really hard for me to read the content through a picture version of this. Okay? So, crayons, colored pencils, things like that to fill in the final project, but we want the whole thing captured. This is what your grade sheet or your feedback sheet will look like from me, plus I'll give you some comments and specific feedback like this. But this is how we will start the feedback process, okay? If you get full credit, you get a check mark for each of these required elements, okay? If you get a check mark with a little minus, that means, okay, you hit on it, but maybe didn't fulfill all the requirements that we were looking for. If you gave me a quote, but not a page number, or if you talked about the setting, but didn't give me those 4 descriptive words, things like that, that means check minus. You touched on it, but didn't fulfill it to the full credit status, okay? Or you get an X if you just missed something that was required, okay? So that's how the grade or the feedback will start, with a checklist like that, and then you'll also get other feedback, so you'll get a sense of like what the actual score or letter grade would be on this assignment ultimately, because we're going to use a feedback sheet like this, okay? Have fun, be creative, okay? We want this to be a challenging project because you need to really show us your understanding of the book and these literary elements that we've been digging into over the last couple weeks, but also through the whole time we read this book. We want to make sure that you understand these concepts, but we also want you to have a little fun with it. So here's a couple more examples I'm going to walk you through. Okay, here's one of those, super colorful, letters go all different directions. It's got, there's quotes, there's things like this, there's word webs, there's, descriptions over here. Again, this is a totally different book, so it's not the same stuff that you're required, but this is an example of what a one-pager might look like. Okay, you might look at this and think, oh, that looks crazy and chaotic and not my style. Fine. Okay, here's another example that might appeal to you and your approach to things a little bit better. Still a very clear visual. Now this one does not have it all colored in and stuff like we're asking you to do, but it is more linear. It's more laid out in a pretty direct way, so that might appeal to you in terms of how you approach yours. Okay, here's another one. Again, super colorful, but pretty easy to follow the layout and know what to look for and where all of the different key information is. And again, you can look through these examples as you go through the Google Slides on your own. I just wanted to make sure that we included some of these to get your wheels turning. Okay, and here is one, and I know that you can't read it or anything through the projection, but this is one that is from Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and it gives us the fence and the lightning bolt and things like that. And so this is, if you could read this, it's that the lines at the beginning of the chapter that talk about the Roll of Thunder, the poem or the song that he was singing, okay? So that just kind of gives you an example of different visual things that you can bring into your project. me if you have any questions. We are going to do this in stages this week. And your first assignment, now that you understand like the big picture of what the final product is going to be, your first assignment for the week is to go into the document that's called the planning sheet. Okay, and on that it just has text boxes that have you fill in all of the information that you need to provide, okay, because content is the most important thing here. So we gotta go in, make sure you have all the content that you need. Fill in that planning sheet. Once that's done, email it to me, and I'll give you some feedback if you're missing anything, or if I want to develop any areas, or anything like that. I'll give you feedback on that. Once you're done with the planning sheet, then we'll get into the drafting, okay, kind of planning the layout of this, and you'll get another quick video from me for lesson number 2, talking about what to do with that step, okay? But today, lesson 1, overview of your final project, and instructions to start assignment 1, which is your content planning sheet, okay? That's all attached on PowerSchool. Email me if you have any questions, and have fun with this week, okay?